Hey everybody, it's Liv at the Free Science Workshop, and for this week's Do Try This at Home, paper airplanes, aka throwing stuff and calling it science. We're going to start with my favorite inside plane, the trick plane. You're going to start folding this by taking the top corner of your paper and folding it down so it lines up with the edge. If you've ever folded paper into a square before, this is the same way you might do something to start origami. But instead of opening it up and cutting off the bottom piece, we're instead going to fold our triangle again so we have a little house shape. Once we've got our edges nice and sharp, we're going to take the tip of our house and fold it down to the bottom of the roof line, aka the only other line you can see there on the paper, giving it sort of a squish top. And honestly, that's all there is to the body of your plane. To add the wings, we're going to want to fold this in half like a taco, with all our creasy bits inside, making sure that we squish it nice and flat. Now you might be tempted to give it little teeny tiny baby wings, where you just sort of flop that top bit down a little bit. This plane flies best with big ol' wings. So I like to fold mine down, leaving about a finger's width to hold on to and toss. Folding one side down, flipping the plane over, and folding the other wing so that they match identically. Once you've got your wings, to add a little bit of stability, we're going to fold up the corner and add some fins as well. These are some of your variables for flying. By tilting the wings up or down, tilting your fins back and forth, changing the way you hold or throw your plane, you might get some different results. And realistically, it's going to take a couple tries, sometimes unsuccessful tries, to get just the right set of variables for your plane. How hard you're throwing it, what angle the wings are at, what angle the fins are at, whether you're tilting the plane. Whoop, there we go. And hopefully you'll dial it in and find just the perfect sweet spot to get it to do something pretty cool. If you're looking for something a little bit more classic, with some additional variables, there's also the Streamlined jet fighter style, which is a style that a lot of people are familiar with. And to start this one, we're going to want to find the middle of our paper, which is pretty easy to do by folding it in half long ways. We're going to fold in each of the corners so that the edge that was the top of the paper now meets the edge in the middle of our paper. It should look like a big long house with a pointy tip in the middle. The neater your folds are, the more likely your plane is to do what you want it to, but give it a few tries and see what works for you. Now, to make our plane even pointier, we're going to fold our new top edge into the middle again. Now, if you're folding it like that and it's not any pointier, we want to make sure we're grabbing the top, there we go, and creasing tight to make our plane like a big long arrow. And we want to do this on both sides, making it as symmetrical as we can, and maybe leaving a little bit of space in the middle so those flaps don't overlap. It should look pretty classic. Now for this plane, the tip can be an extra variable. Whether you want to fold it in just a little, fold it in a lot, not at all, or somewhere in the middle. This is going to change the center of gravity of your plane and ultimately change how it flies. The nose of our plane, in addition to the wing size, are two other examples of variables, things you can change to see how it changes the way your plane flies. Now again, you might be tempted to make little teeny tiny baby wings, but resist the urge and make sure your plane has plenty of wing to fly on, or glide on if you want to be technical. We're going to leave about a finger's width in the back, folding down one wing and creasing it tight, then flipping the plane and matching up the other, making sure to crease that one down tight as well. And this one might be a little tricky depending on what you've chosen to do with the front of your plane, so I recommend using something to help you smush that fold down and get it creased nice and tight. For stability, I'm going to add some fins on this one as well, one on each outside end of the wing, and remembering that the angle of our wings, the angle of our fins, and how much of the nose is folded in are all variables that might affect the way this plane flies when we go to give it a toss. It will very likely take more than one throw, or two throws, or three throws to hone this one in, but keep changing your variables and adjusting until you can get that super sweet spot. Really drives it home. You can see the wear and tear on the nose of the plane because we tried a bunch of different depths for folding in the tip. We've also changed the angles of the wings so that they point up towards the sky. For our last plane, we're going to take a look at the world record. This plane flew for over 226 feet, designed by a hobbyist and thrown by a professional football player. One of the tricky things about this plane, it needs to be folded with A4 paper, which is not a common paper size in the United States. Lucky for us though, there is a way to turn regular paper into A4 paper, that same corner fold that a lot of paper airplanes and origami start with. Using this new creased line as a guide, we're going to take the long edge of the paper and fold it up so that it creases in the middle and meets that crease that we just made. Sounds a little funny, it really just kind of looks like that. Once you've got it, we want to make a dot where the corner of the paper is. So that's the section that we're going to need to cut off. Folding the edge back, there we go, making sure it's nice and lined up. We can see that there's just that tiny little bit that needs to come off. I like to use a ruler, sometimes have a hard time cutting on a creased line. Boop. Trimming that off should give us the same dimensions or ratio of length to width as an A4 paper. If you want one without those pre-creased lines, feel free to use the one you just made as a template to give yourself as many sheets of A4 size paper as you'd like. This plane is called Suzanne, after the designer's wife, and it does give you some pretty awesome flight time. Starting with our A4 dimensioned paper, it's a little skinnier than regular paper, we're going to do the classic triangle corner fold, just like that. You've seen it a few times by now and know how it goes. However, this time, we're going to unfold it and do exactly the same in the opposite direction to go as a big old X on the top half of our paper. Using our practice technique of lining up edges with folds, we are going to do just that once again, lining up the outside edge to our diagonal fold, followed by lining up our other outside edge to our other diagonal fold. Now, one of the ways you can tell you've done this precisely, because the top corner of the paper will line up with the edge of your new diagonal. A lot of the edges and lines seem to magically match up. That's one of the awesome things about some secret math. Really, it's just making this airplane way easier to fold. Next, we're going to fold this front flap down, and you might be tempted to fold on the crease that you can already see, but keep folding until you hit that X on the back side of the paper. You can tell you're there because each diagonal on the X will line up with the diagonal on the front half of your paper. If that doesn't make sense, it's a little harder to describe than it is to do. You can tell you've got it because there'll be a crease all the way through the top corners of your paper that make it really easy to flip them in towards the middle and bring yourself back to another house shape. This time when we fold in half, we're going to leave all of our external flaps on the outside and fold the smooth sides together, being sure that everything is lined up and taking extra care to crease as many folds as you can. We want to get this flat and uniform. When it comes to folding the wings, there is a little bit of trial and error, but we want to imagine a diagonal line that goes about halfway through, leaving a little bit of smooshiness in the nose of the plane, not making it perfectly pointy and sharp, and making sure that we give ourselves plenty of wing area and stop any extra flaps from slipping out the front while we fold. Just as before, we do have some adjustments, making sure to flatten out the nose a little bit, and on this model, curling up those back tips on the wings, so that when the weight in the front of the plane wants to tip it down towards the ground, the wind passing over the wings catches in those little folds and helps level your plane back out for sustained flying. As always, it might take 1 or 2 or 5 or 12 tries to hone it in just right, but once you've got it, nothing's more satisfying than a successful flight. If you give this a try and like what you've made, whether you've created something new or perfected a classic design, let us know. Take a picture, send us a video, reach out, share your inspiration, share the love. We miss you. Can you tell? Can you tell we miss having you in the workshop? Please send us airplanes. We hope everyone out there is safe, curious, investigating the world around them, and doing the best they can with what they've got. From all of us here at the Free Science Workshop, you are ready for takeoff.